Michelle Obama historically has been in the background, sometimes outspoken, but usually not saying a whole lot. That is until she got her podcast, and now we're knowing a lot more about how she thinks, her views, especially in the political world and the black community. Those things are becoming more vocal. And of course, because she speaks a whole lot more, people are clipping these sound bites a whole lot more. And this one kind of got her in trouble.
Wasn't good on SAT, so all the scores said you don't belong at Princeton. And there were people who saw me, saw the color of my skin, and said you're aiming too high. And that was my first insecurity of thinking, well, maybe I don't belong here.
So Michelle Obama is saying here that she went to Princeton. She's from the South Side of Chicago. She might have had the grades, but she did not have a good SAT score. And when she got there, she felt like she didn't deserve to be there. All right. Now, people are challenging this opinion.
She's like, I had to overcome this feeling like I didn't belong because my grades told me that I didn't belong. Well, guess what? I don't think you belonged. Come on. This is just so crazy.
Now, this lady is saying, well, you looked around and felt like you didn't deserve to be there because you didn't deserve to be there, because you didn't get there because of your grades. You got there because of affirmative action or DEI. And then she goes on to say this.
This reminded me of the college admissions scandal of 2019 or 2020, whenever that was, when actors Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman, they tried to get their kids, maybe they're not so smart kids, into colleges that they didn't belong in, right? When white people try to get into colleges that they don't belong in, they have to commit fraud and then they go to jail. And when black people try to get into colleges that they don't belong in, they don't have to commit fraud. The red tape is cut for them.
She says when white parents, try to get their kids into these schools, but what happens is that they are typically, arrested or jailed. And this is, like I said, it does happen. Basically, white people trying to get their kids into schools. I heard the same thing about George Bush going to Harvard. He wasn't the smartest guy out there, but he got kind of hooked up into it. And then you have some black Americans who disagree with DEI.
As a black person, it is offensive, the idea that I've gotten anywhere that I am based on anything other than hard work, merit, and actual qualifications and receipts is offensive. And I think the Democrats, when they're pushing this DEI, they don't know how offensive it is to qualified black Americans.
Let's talk about diversity. Is diversity really needed in the workplace?
You need diversity.
Yeah.
The bad word of the decade. We call it DEI. It's been castigated. It's been demonized, but it's essentially just saying that you just need a lot of different people in rooms, in decision-making rooms, not out of some favor, but as a business strategy.
It's like business.
It's just you would rather miss money.
Right.
That part.
All right, let me kind of get into this. This is important. Number one, let's talk about people who go to Ivy League schools but don't have the scores. Now, what some people would argue is Michelle Obama took away a slot or an opportunity for somebody who should have gotten to Princeton. That could have been a person that's white, Asian, or somebody else who could have really leveraged those connections. And we do know that going to Ivy League schools or going to Princeton or Stanford or even some of the other higher ranked schools, Vanderbilt, Wake Forest, Notre Dame, it's not on the same level as Stanford or the Ivy Leagues, but these things do change the trajectory of your life. It can. Going to college with somebody from Stanford or for somebody from UC Berkeley, especially the Ivy Leagues, I mean, it just opens up so many opportunities. And that's typically what people spend so much money or really want to get into your schools, is because of what it does for the remainder of your life. And not only for the remainder of your life, what it does for your kid's life, right? And then this guy, Rob, he's talking about, hey, he doesn't want anything, in this country unless he earns it. And I can also understand that, but because so many things have happened where black people have lost wealth and lost opportunity, yes, I can see why they do have these things where you have some students who can get into Ivy League schools because of diversity. And this is why I think that diversity for many companies just isn't working. Number one, people who have gotten affirmative action and gotten into these schools, and this has happened with one of my homeboys. I had a homeboy that went to Grant High School with me, did excellent at Grant High School. He went to the University of Pennsylvania. It was very, very difficult for him. He was a smart guy. He ended up failing out, kind of went crazy. And one of the reasons why I think that this may have been the case was because, certain Ivy League institutions may teach at a certain level where every school isn't meant for you. Just because you go to Ivy League school doesn't mean that you're going to be successful, and it doesn't mean that you don't have to go to school that's more fitting for your learning style. I think if my same friend would have went to Prairie View A&M in engineering, he could have went to Alabama and A&M. He could have went to maybe even Berkeley, UC Davis. He probably would have had a lot more support and would have done a lot better. But again, when you go to Ivy League schools, it doesn't mean that you're going to do well in that environment, and you don't necessarily need to do well in that environment. And at the same time, I just think that a lot of these companies, if they thought that DEI was really helping them, they would have fought to keep it. But in the end of the day, DEI is not helping them. Okay, that's why DEI, a lot of the companies decided to get rid of their programs. All right, and a lot of blacks are upset about that, because how dare you get rid of your DEI programs when we need more diversity. In reality, DEI helps women in particular, especially white women, more than that. But people have to see value. All right, again, I think a lot of us would have benefited from affirmative action, benefit from DEI. I would have loved to go to Stanford myself, but I could have probably never made it at Stanford. Right, like I didn't have as a student, I wasn't good enough to go to Stanford, and it was probably better that I didn't go, right? It was better that I went to where I went to. But now let me just say this. She did end up going to Harvard Law School and graduating. So yes, in this case, it appears that her SAT score did not affect, her getting to law school. But in general, that may not always be the case. And what black people are gonna have to do is to stop trying to force diversity and try to understand your community. Like, you want somebody to understand that your diversity is what it is, right? And I get that, but you have an opportunity in understanding the diversity in the white space markets in the black community, and that is where the strength is, right? And that's where it's going now. You see, these guys are getting rid of DEI. Look at Elon Musk. He's kind of done with a lot of the liberal left, the transgender movement, the LGBTQ, now getting rid of DEI. Companies are tired of it. You got AI now. Nobody wants to hear diversity anymore. They just don't. And again, you can talk about that if you want, and I understand it, but people just don't want to do that. That's just the reality. It's not really what it means. And I understand that DEI helps you and affirmative action, but ultimately nobody wants to hear that. Okay, black people are not gonna have that ability, and you're not gonna be able to go and tell a company if they should hire anymore. Sorry, right? And white people are gonna say, listen, it's racism structurally against me that I can't go to Harvard or Yale or Princeton because we have to give our spot to a black person who doesn't score as well. Those days are over, right? It's over. What's going to happen is this. If you want your educational institutions to get better, what are you gonna have to do? You're gonna have to donate to the United College Fund, all right? You're gonna have to invest into your own communities. You're gonna have to make your universities what they need to be in order for your universities to produce what you wanna see in the black community. It's just largely what it's going to be, because people are just gonna be tired. And again, Michelle Obama is just proving the point by saying that you couldn't get into Princeton and you don't belong. You felt like you didn't belong. In many ways, you don't belong. It doesn't mean that you're not smart, okay? You don't belong. And largely, this is what happens in Black America. You show up to some place where people think you shouldn't be there, and based on your scores, you may or may not shouldn't be there. And I'm not saying that she wasn't smart or she couldn't do it, but this is what happened, And this is one of the reasons why it's not there no more. Like, if you want to get into Harvard or Yale now, no affirmative action, no DEI. And you know who's taking those spots now? I'll tell you, Caribbeans and Nigerians in Africa. Like, they're getting the scores just flat out, okay? And so they're gonna take them. Black Americans are not really getting them scores like that. Not that we couldn't, but it's just not happening. So guys, what do you think? It's your boy O'Shea D. Jackson back at it again with an episode of The Celebrity Junk. Appreciate you for all you use, Curly Bell. We're out.